This conference will now be recorded.
Oops, hello. All right. Practice
Hi.
success peeps. This is my sister Sherry, who is a retired EPT teacher, and she's still working on her practice, still doing practice as she kind of slows down to go into retirement. So I thought she would be a fantastic person to interview because she has had a successful EPT business. She has one now, and her goal is to retire at this point. So for those of you who are
Yep.
thinking, do I do this the rest of my life or do I retire? Well, you know what? You just wait and figure that out as it comes. That's what you need to do. So anyway, either way, it forever changes your life and the lives of people you love. So I'm just going to go through and ask these questions. I have several people that have lined up for this kind of interview to help you guys. So how many years have you been an EPT practitioner, Sherry?
26 to 27 years.
And
It's been an amazing ride.
what is EPT?
EPT is a unique process that helps people with difficult, uncomfortable emotions. And it helped me so much that I wanted to learn it to help my kids, my family, and set up the business.
Perfect.
That's it.
So what is
It helps people
name
with difficult emotions.
All right. So what is the name of your business and your web address?
My business here in Huntsville, Alabama. Oh, okay. My business in Huntsville, Alabama is called, hey, Annette.
Yeah.
Annette. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to look during this interview. I'm messing this up. My eyes are everywhere.
No, you're doing good. You're doing good. No, don't worry about it.
Okay. All right. All right.
You're messing
Here we
it
go.
up.
My business.
You can't mess it up.
What?
We're in Zoom land, Zoom world. Everybody does whatever. It's just like, don't sweat it. We're not on CBS.
All right. Well, I have this headset on because I live in a one-bedroom apartment and someone else is working in a one-bedroom house. Someone else is working in the house. So
Okay.
Anyway, that's what this is about.
I think the headset
okay,
is
my
very
business name.
trending. Okay.
This is old school. I am so behind on technology. It's all I can do to keep up. All right. So my business is EPT Works Huntsville. I've been here in Huntsville about 12 years. And because since the pandemic, and I decided to retire at the end of 2021, I have actually taken down my website, which was www.eptworkshuntsville.com. So people that go to that website still are redirected to the EPT Work 7 sessions, where I have a listing on the corporate website.
Cool. And let's see, what was I gonna? Seems like there was something I was gonna say about that, the business. But okay. So what do you charge?
I charge $140 per hour when people have determined and come to me 7 hours. So they pay more up front, but once they're past the 7 hours, it becomes $140 an hour.
Nice. I think we have a little lag on our video. I hope it comes out okay. It's like a weird technology thing. Do you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. It's like a little lag. All right. So, something I wanted to say about, anyway, it'll come back to me. Something about this. Anyway.
Sorry. This is so professional.
It'll come back to me. I know it is. Well, the point is there's people who are learning to do EPT, and I mean, they're setting up practices and that kind of thing, and finding out from people what they do, what's worked for them is really helpful. And to see somebody who actually has a practice besides Dr. Annette. Right. So next I want, now you've been doing this for over 20 years. So it may be like a stretch for you to come up with just 3 or 2, or what I'm looking for is, I want to say to people who are brand new, some of my most impressive EPT sessions came at the beginning when I didn't know what I know now. So you're going to keep learning along the way, but you'll never have a time when you didn't help someone, because forgiveness really helps people, period. And you are, after you've had this
Right.
training, you are an expert in forgiveness. And I mean, don't ever doubt that, because it will change lives. So I want Sherry to just kind of tell you, as an EPT practitioner, 3, at least 3, or maybe whatever number, some EPT sessions that really blew her away, that as an EPT practitioner, she found herself going, what did that just happen? What? Because you're going to have this happen along the way too. So go ahead, Sherry.
Okay, as you're talking, I had 3 in the box. I can't even remember the first one I wrote down now, because I was thinking of so many others as you're giving that intro. But let me go for the second one I wrote down, because I remember it really well, and it was a few years ago. A man in his late 30s came in. He'd had anxiety so bad for the last 3 years, and he had been to medical doctors. He'd had MRIs to make sure he didn't have a tumor on his adrenal or kidney. That the anxiety was so bad he couldn't sleep. He was losing weight. Work was hard for him, and he's got 3 little kids at home, and his health was going downhill. And so someone referred him to me after all of this he'd been through. And he comes in and he signs up for 7 hours. And about the second to third hour of his sessions, we did them over a week at a time. Don't always do that. Sometimes I do a couple, in a week, but this was a week at a time. So I saw him once a week for 7 weeks. About the second to third week hour of EPT, he's sleeping. He's actually calming down. And we really hadn't figured out, we had original times, which would generally go back to age 2. But I think it was about the third session that we really figured out what was the memory or what was the trigger now, why the age 2 kept coming up. But it wasn't until the end of the session that I actually figured it out. I was like, oh, now I know. Well, what happened was at age 2, there was a lot of stuff happening to him. His mom had a little baby, a second baby, so there was a brand new little brother. Dad was working away from home and was coming and going, and mom was living with her parents, or at least near her parents. So grandparents were very supportive, and grandma was always there, taking care of the 2-year-old. Well, then what happens is grandma died about the same time his little brother was born, within a few weeks. So it didn't, like, what occurred to me, so we're just walking through, and I said, so you're 2 years old, your grandma's there always for you, and then you wake up one day and she's not there. And no one can explain it to him for a 2-year-old, right? But as a 2-year-old, he stored it as anxiety. So the loss of grandma was really what we were looking for that. But it was still not clear, well, what triggered him now to go into this memory? But anyway, that session, I remember when we got to that, he really cried and a lot. And he did a lot for many of the sessions, but that one was the most significant one. And then at the end of the session, I said, I know why 3 years ago this started in you. I just figured this out because one of his daughters was born, his second daughter. He had just had his third daughter born, but the second child triggered the 2-year-old who had a little baby brother, the 2 kids. And then the anxiety was the bookmark for that. I'm 2 and I have no idea where my grandmother is, and no one can explain this to me. So once we processed that with, verbally with EPT, he was great.
Wow.
No more problems.
That is
That was
amazing.
really amazing to me.
I love
I
that.
think
I love that. Yeah, I love that because you committed to enough sessions to get to the root of what you needed to get to. And that's amazing. That's really important because I want EPT practitioners to know that if you don't like hit it out of the park in the first session, you shouldn't be limited to just that session.
Yeah, right. That's true. And I think even through years working with clients, sometimes they'll go, why didn't this ever come up? And I don't know. I've said that with my own work. Why did this take so long to come up? Why is it buried in there? And I just, I think it's like you just have to let go of that and say, what comes up, comes up. And, I'm going to live life today as best I can. And when it comes
Right.
up,
And
deal with it, work with it.
right. And, be willing to commit to whatever comes up and trust it. It's getting
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
to another place. It's getting you somewhere else. And that means something you never even knew was there might come up.
Right. And that can be, I think that's one of when it's, you can really identify what's going on. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about this one a little bit. This last week, I had a teenager come in with panic attacks, a young teenager, like 13 or 14 years old. And he had anxiety starting 2 or 3 years ago, maybe. But I was thinking, well, and I talked to his mom before they committed to come in for their first session. As far as she knew, there was no trauma. I knew dad had a trauma as a child. None of that came up in the session. What came up was a birth picture and an age 5 picture. Actually, it came up in the reverse order, age 5, then birth. And that happens sometimes. I think that happened with the man with the anxiety, where his 6-year-old self came up. It's almost like that's the first level, and then you got to get back to something more. Well, I was having trouble, as much experience as I have, trying to figure out, okay, well, birth is a bit of a trauma. There's some negative stuff there. Age 5, we were struggling with what's the trauma. It was really separation from mom. Turns out it was really like we did all the process and everything, and it wasn't until after the session. And I said, okay, well, we'll meet next week, right? And he was feeling better. What happened was right after we did the second picture, which was the birth picture. Yeah, the birth picture, I think, came second. He had a little mini panic attack. It was perfect. I was like, oh, cool. We get to watch this. Mom was there with him. And so I said, Mom, you time this. And while he's having this little, well, I say little because it didn't last long. It was a full-blown panic attack in the chair. And he's describing, what it feels like. His fingers are going numb. He's having a hard time breathing. So you said, okay, I'm going to check your points on your body. I'm going to breathe. I'm tapping his head, and I balanced some of his organs. I said, okay, lung, and had him breathe while he's having this. It lasted less than 2 minutes, like maybe a minute and a half. And I said, that was perfect. You know what I think that was we did that memory, and then the panic attack came up. And it released. So it was really cool. But trying to say, okay, there wasn't a significant trauma where he got hit on the head, or it was these and he was like, how does this fit? Why birth, why 5? It wasn't until after I said, I talked to his mom. She said, we got home and he was feeling so much better. We're not going to do the second session until, the next one, until he feels like he needs to come back. And I said, that is fantastic, because what I learned was panic attacks are really part of growing, can be. Growth spurts can increase these or bring them up. And I think he's just so body aware that he's feeling himself grow and his body having to push. That's not what I was expecting when he came in, to find something very just the body working for itself, not clearing the negative emotions and how he relates to the panic attack was all that session was about, and it helped him move forward. It was so amazing to me. That's,
I
but it
know.
was hard for me too. It was a hard one for me to see because I'm looking for the emotional injury, and there wasn't really one. It was a growth. Birth and 5 were growth points, growth changing out of the womb and growth separating from mom. And now he's
Right,
growing physically.
right.
It was so,
Well,
yeah, I
and
want to
I
say
think
very
what's
common,
amazing,
basic.
right. Well, and I think what's amazing is when somebody, it takes a lot of discipline when somebody comes in and lays all their traumas on the table and you muscle test and you don't hit any of them. For you to not keep looking at what they're sticking in your face. It takes a lot to, I'm thinking I had a person last week and she has a trauma in her family, a kid trauma. And I want to work on her as the mom. And you know what comes up? Her dad when she's 5. And there's no trauma there other than she had a rough dad, but it had nothing. It didn't look like it had anything to do with what she was dealing with right now. Um, and you know what? And even me, as all the time I've done this, it's very tempting to go, well, let's just talk about what you just told me instead of what the body gives you. So it's
Right.
kind of amazing when you just commit to the story and the conflict that the body is serving up when you do, when you go to find it, even if you don't at the moment know exactly why it's related, just commit to it. Because that's why they're probably not getting any help, because they keep hammering away at the things they think they know is causing it. So anyway, that's a great example. Do you have any more?
Okay, one more. The Several years ago, a woman came. She was so amazing. She was referred through the natural pharmacy that I work at, and so she came in. She was a 30-year psychotherapy client, 5 hours of counseling and psychotherapy per week. When she came in to see me, she was signed up for that much. She had like 3 different counselors and psychotherapists that she rotated through basically during the week. She comes in to me, her problem, lifelong depression. I just wanted to try this, right? I'm going into trying natural things in my life now because of all the years, and why not, right? Just why not do this? She was still using the system as it was to maxing it out, I would say, at 5 hours a week. So I was like, okay. So we did the first session and she had a great release. And she said she looked up after she like dried her eyes and she felt that relief of EPT, and she said, that is nothing like psychotherapy. I have the belief for the first time in my life that I can get through this lifelong depression, which was
Wow.
just amazing to her and me. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, great, she's going to come every week. No, she wants to come once a month. So she signed up for a month later. She's been coming once a month for several years. Every session is amazing. It's not always like that first one, but she keeps coming and she finds help with it. After about the 6 months that I knew her, so 6 sessions of us together, she was down to like 2 to 3 hours of counseling a week. And now that I know her, I don't even know that she goes to counseling weekly. She comes once a month to me. She has signed up for other support systems. So I know she might have somebody online, but not a regular psychotherapist counselor person. And she has like diet counseling. But that is it for her now. And she renewed, I've known her for like 6 or 7 years. She renewed her relationship with her husband. They were living in the same house separated and they became friends about 3 years ago, and they're building their retirement house, which so they built a project together. They actually became friends again, which wasn't back when I met her. They were two people in a house together. So it's really cool.
I love that one. I love it. So, okay. So as we all bask in our successes and the things that humble us before God, there's another thing that can happen as an EPT practitioner. There are sessions that don't blow you away, that leave you feeling crippled and wondering why you're doing this. And if you're ever going to be able to do it right, even though you've got lots of them that are working, that one that just trips you up and that didn't feel great. So do you have one of those?
I picked a whole series, one person that bought 7 sessions, right? And let me just, and I know I talked to you about this probably 3 or 4 years ago when it happened. Someone referred her to me. She lived in a different city and she wanted to do phone work. And I felt competent doing phone work because I'd done loads of phone work. And she was someone who was a holistic advisor sort of person. So I figured she has experience, right, with her own work. Well, somehow I didn't ask the right questions. I just jumped in and trusted this was going to work. We set up the contract. We're going to do 2 sessions on the phone a week. So it's going to be like 3.5 weeks. We're going to do 7 hours. And her big issue was hip pain. She wanted her hip pain. It was horrible and she wanted it to go away. So we get started and it's related to her anger. Well, that just made her angrier. I got the blame of everything. She was acid angry on the phone. It was so hard to be in the session with her. But there was a little bit of movement, right? Well, and then so every day we'd go into session and I'd be like, because she was, oh wow, she'd lay it all out there and I'd be thinking, okay, good, she's doing it, she's getting it out. And there'd be like in the morning her hip would be better, and then a bit better, not 100%. She wanted 100% better. And but she would admit it was somewhat better and she'd vent and we do forgiveness. She did not like this going to original events. That was just like, oh, she was angry about just the whole process and what's the point. And but then she'd hang in there with the process. Okay, session 6. We get to session 6 and I'm like, only 2 more sessions. I was so like, and she was just really, because I was the blame, I realized, okay, I'm just reflecting. I'm just being that. And I was just getting through them. And it would get better. At the end of the session, it'd be better. We'd have an up, right? Well, session 6, we're in and she tells me she has a gun in the drawer. She's threatening to blow herself up with me on the phone with her. And so I'm just like, okay, look, there is a suicide hotline. I am not a suicide hotline. And, she hasn't been honest with me. This has obviously been there all along. And now I'm angry. Angry at myself, angry at her for not being straight with me about how serious or whatever her problem was. It's not about her hip, right? But then she's angry when you go to what it is about. So, we stayed on the phone for the session and she decompressed. She didn't do that. She didn't do herself in while I was on the phone, but she wouldn't call the suicide hotline either. So I just, I was like, well, tomorrow's our last session. She didn't want to show up for the last session, but I said, I will show up for you. Actually, it wasn't until 15 minutes into session 7 she gets on, she's like, what's the point? This is the last hour, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, look, I'm here for you. Maybe there is a point, maybe there isn't. But how about we work together through this? So I get her to work through the whole hour. Okay, rah, 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 just cranky. And so we get through the session and her whole complaint is, I need like hours and hours of EPT, not just like 1 or 2 or 7. And I'm like, well, yeah, you do. And her hip did improve. I would say, like, through her comments, 50%. I couldn't really tell because she was so angry and so self-destructive through it. But she did not blow herself up, and she is still alive because I can see her online. She never called me again. I have sent her, I sent her the conclusion of the sessions and things that I always do. She never sent me any more questions, no thank yous. She did pay for her sessions. That was all fine. It was like a business deal. And, when if I look her up online, she looks much improved. I know she's still got all that stuff inside of her. And I don't know what other work she's done, but that was the hardest 7 hours ever.
Wow.
That was it. Just,
Yeah. I don't know if
I
I could
think
have
if I
done the
had
7
known,
hours.
I would not have signed up. I would not have signed
Well,
up had I
it's
had, and you told me after I talked to you about it later that I probably should have asked her a few more introductory questions, which I didn't do, and then not taken her as a phone client and referred her to someone else. She did order magnets, so she was using magnets, which is not every phone client has magnets. But anyway, yeah, that was a real learning experience for me, and I would say anybody like that that's come into my practice in person usually stays for 3 to 5 hours and then runs away because they don't want to face their stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think
They stay
the
when they're ready.
honesty.
They stay when they're ready. Yeah.
Yeah. And
What? Sorry.
and I think that, her biggest problem is what you said. She wasn't actually ready to be honest. She couldn't tell the truth to you or to herself. So, yeah. All right. So, what's your best marketing advice?
Keep practicing talking to people about what you do. It's just continual. It's ongoing practice to just talk to people about what you do, and do it one-on-one. When people ask you, have an answer for what you do, and get comfortable with it. I think that was my hardest thing, was get comfortable with it. Have lunch and learns, go to groups, talk to groups, just talk about EPT and what you do.
And what have you learned along the way that you wished you would have known in the beginning?
That you never stop learning. I think in the beginning, I really thought it was a 1-week seminar or 4 days or whatever, and then, I'll go out and practice and that'll be it. And I liked coming back to classes, but I was always learning. So, and I'm still learning. It doesn't end. I think I didn't realize that it was a real profession. But early on, I don't know that any of us realized it was a real profession.
That's a great
So
thing.
I didn't know what
So,
all the implications of having a profession was. I just didn't understand that. Now that I'm much older, I get it. I get it. A professional never stops learning. Even an architect, you learn that. You think college is the end when you're young, and it's not. It's never the end. It's just the beginning.
yeah, I
That's
know.
it.
I mean, I remember being in chiropractic college and a chiropractor and having all these student loans and a chiropractor in a class saying, um, you will spend more money in your lifetime on continuing education than you ever spent coming to school. And I remember thinking, not me. But one year, me and Ron sat and added up all the seminars, all the things, the extenuated things we had done over the years. And sure enough, it was like ebbing on $300,000, which was more than I paid for my education.
Yeah.
So that guy was completely right. And so yeah, that's it is a thought that you never stop learning. I think for EPT, the reason I never stop learning. Like, I mean, I'm the person who's sharing stuff, but I still am inspired. And I think that happens because the depth of the soul. You know, we are doing soul work, which is a fabric of humanity that gets wounded and that can be healed and that reflects in everything we do in our life and our health. And that depth of humanity, that depth of the
I
soul is
can't hear
so,
you.
oh, okay.
Okay.
That depth, can you hear me now? That depth of the soul is so
Yeah.
deep that you can't do, you will be learning all your life. It's like finding out what the expanse of God is because God created it. So anyway, words of inspiration. Do you have any words of inspiration to new practitioners?
My words of inspiration are you help people. People will trust you, show up, care enough to show up and be in truth with them and be there to work for them. Don't doubt yourself because you're helping. That's it.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And oh, I know what was I going to say? It came back to me and then I forgot again.
Thank you for teaching me and training me all these years because really that question about is there anything people would have told you early on, you and mom helped me along the way to stay in there.
Wow. Wow. Well, and I am just so grateful for all the people that you were willing to help that I would have never reached. I couldn't have seen. There's no way I could have helped the amount of people that I was doing and that you were doing. And I'm so grateful that you stepped up and took this mission on in your life and were bold enough and brave enough to show up, setting all your junk away and showing up fully for somebody to help them move forward in their life. It's just that brings me a joy that is incomprehensible almost to me. It's overwhelming. And
Me
I'm
too.
so grateful to you and everyone. Yeah,
I'm
I'm
grateful for
waiting.
you. It makes me cry in
Oh,
good ways.
yes, I have the cries too, in good ways, very good ways. All right, well, I'm gonna hit this, and we did it in 35 minutes. So I'm not gonna leave. I'm just gonna hit the record button.